Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Winning Browns podcast with me, Yash Talalkar, actually wearing the color of the Cleveland Browns right now, as you can see, as well as Akila Srivatsa. It has been a while since we last did an episode. Unfortunately, we did get caught up in the whole fiasco
That's
with
cold, man. That's real cold. I see how you walked up on that. Okay, I'll give you it. I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you. But that's cold. That's real cold.
But yes, finals was rough for us. We had our own dysfunction, like the Cleveland Browns, being the last few weeks. But now we're over it.
Yeah,
Let's just put it this way: we found our Baker Mayfield, and unlike the Cleveland Browns, we don't need an adult in the room because now both of us, ever since the last year, as I don't know what I'm doing, we are now
yeah.
adults in the
I,
room. We are now adults, and we work to improve this podcast, and we do.
Josh is looking like them 1979 Bill Walsh looking glasses on, trying to act like he's some kind of smarty. But anyways, guys, I'm just as I am. Plain old jacket. Kind of got the beard flowing. It's not.
Yes,
It's not
sir.
coming great. I get it, but it's growing.
You got to grow that thing like
Um,
Matt Patricia, man.
Yeah, well, no, not Matt Patricia. We'll use another example for a beard. Okay, that man was
Sure.
the worst coach in Lions history. Let's be honest right now. But there's a reason why Bill Belichick didn't hire him at North Carolina yet. So, I mean, from that standpoint. But first of all, I mean, I know we have a lot of different topics ahead, but let's just put it out there. What a guy! You're 75 years old. You're a year away from the game. You have two consecutive losing seasons with the Patriots. And what do? You go back to yourself when you were 3 years old, when your dad was an assistant coach for, I believe, 1 or 2 years at UNC, North Carolina Tar Heels, and you come in and you're going to be the next head coach. I mean, first of all, a huge change for college football, which I'm getting into more and more. But man, it's I know people are like kind of really out there, and some people were like national champions ahead. Obviously, that's not going to come, right?
Right.
At least, I mean, we don't know how much longer he's going to coach. He's 72, 73 right now. It's quite old to be head coaching, especially at the level that UNC is. But I think overall, what we're seeing from him is slowly, I mean, kind of getting into this college football life. I think it's going to make him mold players, which is what he's always wanted to do, right, as a head coach. So I think it's kind of the perfect fit for him, especially at his age and kind of moving on with life.
Yeah, I agree with you. When it comes to North Carolina itself, as far as just the current college football landscape, I think it's going to be interesting to see how Belichick, being an NFL lifer, really uses the resource college football differently. Honestly, quite frankly, I think the NIL will kind of work in his favor, being that he is unbelievable when it comes to unearthing, especially defensive gems. We've seen in the NFL finding some of the best defensive players from Division II schools. A guy like
Mm.
Kyle Duggar comes to mind from Lenore Ryan, if I'm pronouncing that college correctly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited as hell for the North Carolina Tar Heels. That's a little hard for me to say, given I grew up hating North Carolina, more specifically because they're basketball. I grew up being a Duke fan.
Duke, yeah,
My dad is more of
yeah.
the excited guy in the house right now because he's a North Carolina fan. Um, but yeah, like
Bad situation to be in terms of basketball. I mean, I
oh,
don't
you
follow
have
it
no
much.
idea how bad the household was the week that North Carolina played Duke in the Final Four last few
I
years
mean,
ago.
I think they've lost recently to Florida, who, by the way, is a very good team from
Very
the looks of
much.
it. But that's college basketball. That's for another day. Let's get
Yeah.
to the NFL now.
When it comes to the NFL, though, I mean, there have been some very interesting storylines that have come out over the last few weeks. One of the ones that we haven't yet got to talk about, and I think is probably one of the more funny and comical ones. Actually, there are two. One of them is more just kind of like a social media type thing with the whole Woody Johnson, Brick Johnson. I don't think we really need to go over that too much. I think the Jets kind of speak for themselves, and we've
Yeah,
talked about them way too much on this channel already.
yeah,
Um, but as far as the Bears, we talked about Caleb Williams, and there has been improvement on his level over the last few weeks, right?
yeah.
With Thomas Brown, I think you're starting to see a little bit more kind of firmness and more command in his play. The ability to be able to read pressure, to be able to make quick decisions is still a bit of a problem. But some of these things that have led to the Bears losing over the last few weeks have been far from his fault. Ever since that Hail Mary, when it came to Washington, the Bears have had two very close calls as far as being able to win the game at the Packers and then the
Sure.
Vikings. Both games, one ended up being a blocked field goal and the other ended up being an overtime loss. And then there was the Lions game on Thanksgiving. And oh my God, I do not think I have ever, and I've been watching the NFL for now 14 years. I do not think I have ever seen clock management in the last 30 seconds as horrible as what we
Yeah.
saw with Matt Eberflus
But you know
on
what, Yash?
Thanksgiving Day.
I do actually want to comment about that game. If you look at the tape, I don't know if it was Dan Orlovsky on ESPN or some other channel that I was watching, but when you look at it, first of all, from a head coaching standpoint, I mean, there's a reason why Matt Eberflus is not the head coach anymore.
Correct.
It was a when they hired him, I believe it was 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago. Me and Yash were talking about this. I mean, I was shocked because
Yeah, me
look,
too.
from a standpoint of a defensive coordinator in Indiana, he did a tremendous job. I mean, you take guys like Darius Leonard, who the entire I think when he got drafted in 2018, everybody was like, "This is the worst move the Colts have ever made as an organization." And he comes in, he has three straight Pro Bowl seasons, three All Pros. Matt Eberflus, from a defensive standpoint, even with the Bears this season and the previous season, they showed up, right? They were that defense was that part that held the offense up. Not to the extent that Solid did with the Jets, but you guys get what I mean in that
Hmm.
sense, right? But from a standpoint, when it came to the Bears at that point in time, from a clock management standpoint, it was horrendous.
Correct.
But Caleb was changing the play. When he was calling up all this tapping the head and then the moving around, he's changing up the play because he sees a coverage that's just not going to work in favor of that play. But at the same time, you can't go through that long of a cadence. If you see the receivers moving around and everything else, you got to go snap,
Hmm.
right? There's no time for this whole A. I can't be Cam Newton, if you get what I mean. Like I just
Right.
can't wait for the defense to give me something. It's not that time. And and it was first of all the wrong play to switch to. Sorry. From that play, if I remember, Rome was running something called known as a double route, which is I'm gonna fake inside and then I'm gonna try to go up.
Exactly.
Rome didn't run it correctly, and he's been massively underperforming from a route standpoint this season. Route running standpoint, Roman Dinsey has not been performing to the level at least I expected of him. So from that standpoint, it was the wrong play to call at the wrong time. But the clock management, as you said, is horrendous. So I just want to put it out there. It's not a one man kill it all.
Right.
It was a combination of the quarterback overthinking it, as well as the coach not having a stronghold over the quarterback.
But this
And he was just yeah.
But this is
But I just
where
wanted
I
to point that
think
out.
this kind of becomes a little bit on more on Matt Eberflus, right? When you're a rookie quarterback, right, you're gonna have these kind of situations where the last 30 seconds you're gonna kind of overthink this, right? And I'm not trying to take away the blame from Caleb Williams. I think that there is a lot of things that he could have done better. Like you said, it was a terrible play call to run. I'm not gonna put any euphemism on it. It was a terrible play call to run at that specific point in time. And
Yeah,
moreover, I think it was a terrible decision from Caleb Williams to throw the ball to Rome Odunze given the chance. I think the only reason that decision was justifiable was because there were 6 seconds on the clock. But the fact of the matter is, there was one weakness in that scheme that Caleb Williams didn't see, and that should not have the problem. My problem with that is Matt Eberflus. That should have never happened in the first place. If you're Matt
yeah.
Eberflus, right, you should be able to identify, okay, your quarterback's struggling to be able to get the right play call, time's running out. You have no timeouts. This was not a matter of managing, oh, you have a
Throw it away.
timeout or anything.
Throw it
It
away.
was just no timeouts. Or sorry, excuse me, there was one timeout,
There
right?
was one timeout. That's what everybody was shocked on
Right.
because they had that timeout. You could have run the ball, take it down, maybe 3 seconds,
Well, that's the
timeout.
thing. So there's that one timeout, right? So you got to at least know, all right, if nothing's working on this, you just have to burn it, right? That's unfortunate, but you just have to burn it. And Eberflus himself kind of explained about the idea of, you wanted to be able to kind of get one more play. Here's the
Yeah.
problem I have with that though, right? The Bears had a very, very open. The Bears had the decision of being able to just get those 4 yards to get into field goal territory.
Hmm.
It's not like the sack took out a lot of yardage for them. They were still very well close to field goal territory. They were only like 4 yards away. All they
Hmm.
needed to do, DJ Moore was on. All DJ Moore needed to do was run an out route pattern, get out of bounds, and
Yeah.
they would be in field goal territory. And there was
Hmm.
enough space to do so, right? If Caleb Williams doesn't see that read, that's partially on him. But if the clock is still running out at that point, that's on Matt Eberflus, and that's on Matt Eberflus only.
Yeah.
And that's why there's no excuse for that. He should have been fired. And this is quite frankly something that we have been seeing happen this whole year. Brett Coleman, I think, made a very good video explaining just kind of the discourse that a lot of defensive and offensive players have had for the Bears. Confusion, just kind of lack of communication, lack
Yeah.
of communication between the leaders of the team and the coach. And when that leads to the amount of times that the Bears players have been calling out Eberflus in the press and the times that he's throwing the team under the bus. And then
Yeah.
you have this on live TV, on on prime time, on Thanksgiving. It just makes sense,
It's
all the
tough.
sense in the world
It's
for me.
tough. Yeah. Moving on, to another topic from a standpoint of just overall review of what's happened in the NFL. Michael Penix is officially going to be the starter of the Atlanta Falcons for the upcoming week against the Giants. Now, obviously, not much of a competition from the
Hmm.
standpoint of their 2-12 team. Falcons are coming in at a 7-7 team, but I think it's a way for the league to see, is the quarterback experiment going to work? Right?
Sure.
They go in with the round one, pick eight. You have guys like I forget his name from Alabama, DeAndre Carter. I don't remember the name. Certainly not DeAndre Campbell. No one wants a guy like that. I think you can speak for that. But
If you want, I can go on
disgusting,
a
by the
rant
way.
on that very, very
Yeah,
quickly,
that
actually.
was honestly like, the only interestingly, it's the 49ers. But the only incident I can relate to someone walking off the field was what's his name? It's the Vernon Davis walking off the field from the 49ers. And that was not even his fault. Mike Singletary, one of the greatest linebackers of all time, says go take a shower. He wasn't even wanting to go off. He just got pulled off.
Right.
This is embarrassing, walking off as though no one on the other team cares. Um, that's another topic, though. But when in relation to Michael Penix, I mean, me and you were really, you especially, were very, very high on Michael Penix from a quarterback standpoint. When you look at the college tape, he was a good player in Indiana. He was a great player at Washington. He could make really deep throws, had great accuracy on deep throws.
Absolutely.
He was just a natural thrower. It's not an offense that we use for quarterbacks, but he just naturally threw the ball. It was
100%.
it's not like sometimes you look at Brady. I don't think it's a natural throw. Like he looks like he's really putting an effort to every pass he
Right.
throws. Montana, no, right? He just like slings it.
Right.
Even Mahomes, I wouldn't say it's like a natural thrower by any measures, right? He's more of like a baseball fast pitch or a
Gunslinger.
curveball, right?
Yeah.
Penix is just like he flows every single time he throws that ball. It's really a beautiful thing to see. So can he translate that to the NFL? Right? Is he going to be able to make those right reads? Is he going to be able to make those right plays? Now, the thing I do want to see from this, my biggest takeaway would be this. Is it as valuable to bench a starting level quarterback for a older, much wiser, much more, knowledgeable quarterback who's played in the NFL for a long time and has been successful, like Kirk Cousins, and then bring him in? Is that experiment still going to work? We've seen that with the Green Bay Packers. We
Hmm.
saw it with Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. We saw it from Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love, which has been working, right? We can say what we want. Jordan Love is getting better every game. And it's scary because we're seeing what could be in the future a 14-year starter for the Green Bay Packers, and they could possibly win a Super Bowl, right? Because that's the way it's moving along right now. So from that standpoint, can Penix do the same thing? Is he capable of the same thing? I think that's what we're going to see on Sunday against the Giants. Now, am I saying I'm expecting 213 yards and two touchdowns? No.
Right,
All I'm saying is he going to be like Caleb Williams, who's just going to be running around all day and attracting the pressure? Or is he going to be like a Jaden Daniels? I'm not going to go for 350 yards in a game,
right,
but I'm going to make every pass count.
right.
Is he going to be like that? I think that's what I want to see. So that's for me is going to be my main takeaway from what Penix does this Sunday.
For me, yeah, I honestly agree with you in a lot of ways. For me, it's just kind of how he handles the pressure the first time, especially with quarterbacks who are sitting behind a team or are sitting behind another veteran quarterback for a long time. That's usually the biggest thing you want to see. When we saw a guy like Patrick Mahomes play against a really good Denver defense in his final week, um, we ended up seeing he was handling pressure well. He didn't have a gaudy stat line. I think he only had about 200 yards and two touchdowns actually. Um, but it was enough to show, okay, if he improves, if he kind of settles in, learns the offense a little bit more, and Andy Reid is a great offensive play caller, obviously,
Incredible,
he's
incredible, yeah.
going to have a lot of success in that system. And lo and behold, he certainly did. Um, we saw with Jordan Love, his first start actually, well, his first start not being forced through Aaron Rodgers' COVID fiasco, uh, was the Eagles start when he got injured or the
Mm,
Eagles game in 2022 when Aaron Rodgers got injured halfway through the game. And against an Eagles defense that had 70 sacks the whole year, he played really, really well,
yeah,
and he had 200 yards in one half, right? And then
that's
lo and
true.
behold, the next year Jordan Love plays like a Pro Bowl quarterback. Um, so for me, I mean, this is a Giants pass rush that's pretty underrated, honestly. I mean, you got Azeez Ojulari that has about 8 sacks. We know how good Brian Burns is, Dexter Lawrence,
Yeah,
Kayvon Thibodeau, etc. This is a pretty good Giants pass rush. And Michael Penix, with his ability, I want to be able to see if he can take in that pressure. I want to see if he can be able to make, tight window throws, settle in. I'm not asking for it every single play, but I want to see it at least a couple times. If he can do that, that is going to show that he can improve down the stretch next year and in years later. Um,
100%.
Now, before we move on, I do want to kind of address the Devondre Campbell situation real quick because, quite frankly, and it's not just the Campbell situation. Quite frankly, this has been a recurring theme this year in the NFL as far as immaturity by NFL players. And I want to quite frankly say that this is an embarrassment for the NFL. Um, People talk about the NFL going soft over the last few years because, oh my God, the rules have changed and all that. That's not the reason why the NFL has got soft. NFL players are bigger, stronger, more athletic than ever, and they still lay out big hits. The problem is, the rules are changing to make the league more safe, but you still see huge hits on a daily basis. If that wasn't the case, we wouldn't, and I don't want to make this sound like I'm wishing this upon players. We wouldn't have seen Damar Hamlin collapse on a football field 2 years ago. We wouldn't have seen all of some of these extremely violent and very scary injuries happen to some of these NFL players. But the fact of the matter is, has happened. The reason why the NFL has become soft is because of, quite frankly, I'm going to cuss on this, quite frankly, because of bullshit like this, right? The fact of the matter is, when you have a player who decides, I don't want to play today, right? I'm going to play tomorrow. I'm still owed $5 million a year, right?
Yeah,
That speaks for itself. It's beyond just the idea that you think that you don't have the ability, you don't want to play one game. If there's something involving, there's some you're struggling with something, I get that, right? I've 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 worked jobs before. I know Akilesh, I don't know the extent of how many jobs he's worked, but I know you've worked some gigs before, right? If you didn't show up one day, right, at
you're
the end of the
done.
day, and then it just expected to come tomorrow without telling your
You're
employer,
done.
you're done, right? And this man is being paid $5 million, and he has the gall to then the next day, on top of that, you're quitting on your teammates. Then the next day, come up to your employer, to your coach, and say, I don't feel like playing today, but I'll see you tomorrow. I mean, it's beyond just, you know, quitting on your team. It's frankly entitlement. And we saw it with Deontay Johnson too with the Baltimore Ravens. And quite frankly, Akhilesh and I would both say this, being someone who's played sports in the past, including football. If a teammate of mine did this, we played for no money, right? In,
Yeah,
amateur leagues. I know how my teammates would have thought about that incident of how we seen that happen in front of us. If a teammate like that quit on us, we would not
we don't
want him on
talk.
our team again. So imagine how a
Yeah,
professional who dedicates their whole life to this would feel. And I will say
yeah,
this, call this out for even other players who get, lesser, who get, bigger leashes, so to say, with when it comes to this type of stuff. Antonio Brown, Vontae Davis. This stuff has happened before in the NFL. It's just happened more this year, and we have called it out. The reason why Antonio Brown didn't got a bigger leash was quite frankly because he was Antonio Brown, one of the most talented players, and maybe a Hall of Famer. Tune into that later on in this episode, but quite frankly, he's done this before. And I'm not even talking about the time with the Bruce Arians and the Buccaneers. This man skipped an entire week of practice leading to the final week in 2018, and then expected to play or week 17, excuse me, and then expected to play the Bengals game. And when he didn't, he just left at halftime. So
yeah,
I really, really hope that the NFL takes this seriously. And I really hope that they crack down on this type of stuff because it's quite frankly a disgrace to the NFL. And quite frankly, it puts a bad image on the idea for so many people who dedicate their life and earning to seeing an NFL team play at a game in person. They pay for TV to afford TV to be able to watch a game. Um, and then a player thinks that he can just not play whenever the hell he wants just because he feels like it. And this is not a mental
yeah,
struggle thing because he did not communicate that. If this was, even if it was, you have to be able to communicate that with your coach at all points, right? You have
yeah,
to. And the fact that he didn't is still deserving of getting him fired from his job, which basically means he should not ever play a down of football again. And
yeah.
that might seem unfortunate, but that's the harsh reality of working in America and working anywhere.
The thing is, I'll end it with this. When you look at from the film standpoint, when he was with Green Bay, he was a fantastic player. You
Absolutely.
you look at the plays that he was able to make. I mean, look from a standpoint of the individual, I get it. You've worked your tail off all season long, and then now you come in and you're basically said you're on the bench, right? And you've worked your tail off. You're making play
Absolutely.
after play after play. I mean, we talk about Fred Warner being that defensive player candidate. I'm not sure now, but we forget Devondre Campbell on those blocks, on those screens, everything else. He's the one eating those tackles for Fred Warner most of the time. Like people
Absolutely.
forget that. But as you said, the reality is, although it looks unfortunate, truth is you're not better than Dre Greenlaw. You're not better for that system than Dre Greenlaw. Greenlaw makes better plays than you. You're older now. You have to accept it and move on. Mean Joe Green wasn't Mean Joe Green throughout his career. He had to make sacrifices. I get it. He was a starter and all, and he was a perennial Pro Bowler. But at the
Right.
same time, if you are truly that veteran, that leader of that locker room, you have to say, if I take a step back, it's gonna be for the betterment of the team. I'll do it.
You said
And
it yourself. I mean, you talked about him being an older player. You think that teams are going to want an older player just like that? You got to show that you got to have something else, leadership. You got to show some sort
yeah,
of quality that contributes to the team. When you quit on your team, that is the biggest no-no that any team could look at and say, I don't want that player on my team.
yeah.
And that's not just executives, that's the players on the field. That's the
No, it's
fans.
it's unfortunate.
It
It's
really
it.
is.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next order of business, includes with the NFL Hall of Fame coming up in the following months. We have had a list of NFL Hall of Fame semifinalists, and I think especially this year more than ever, the Hall of Fame ballot is a really interesting one because of some very polarizing players.
Hmm.
So Akilesh and I are going to be talking about who we think is deserving and not deserving of being in the Hall of Fame, both this year and in
Yep.
previous years when it comes to snubs and future players who might be up for Hall of Fame consideration. Akhilesh, I'm going to start off with the 2025 25 Hall of Fame class. Usually there are about seven players plus a senior player that ends up making the Hall of Fame. Sometimes it's a coach too. But I'm just going to stick with the seven players that are in the regular ballot. Akhilesh, who would
Okay.
you say are your seven players that are on your Hall of Fame ballot this year?
For me, number one, Jared Allen has to be Hall of Fame. If he's not this year, then the Hall of Fame committee needs to change.
I agree.
James Harrison, number two.
Ooh,
Rodney Harrison, number three. Luke Kuechly, Torrey. Robert Mattis, definitely.
whoa, okay. Oh, okay.
Um, Reggie Wayne. I think I'm at five now, right?
I think, yeah, five.
This is where it gets tough for me. Those, without a doubt, I will choose. Hmm. Torrey Holt, without a doubt.
Agree.
You know what? I want to put this guy in because I'm a Chargers fan, but I do have to be reasonable. Jahari Evans will be my seventh inductee in the National Football Hall of
Yeah,
Fame.
I'm gonna agree with you on. So for me personally, yeah, I agree with you on Jared Allen. Certainly Luke Kuechly. If Luke Kuechly doesn't make the Hall of Fame, I will quit watching the NFL and
No, you
I
won't. No,
will.
you
I
won't.
absolutely will. Luke
No,
Kuechly,
you won't.
yes, I will.
I
I
guarantee you
will.
won't.
Nah, yeah, Akhilesh is probably right. I will not.
Yeah,
Um, but yes, Jared Allen being someone who I think finished his career with 122 sacks, four-time first
unbelievable.
team All-Pro. He had 22 sacks in a season. I don't know how you don't put him in. Same thing goes with Luke
Exactly.
Kuechly, being one of the top three linebackers in the league for a
Well,
first
this is his
division
first time it's a
linebacker is,
semifinalist, so
yeah,
it's his first time. So
absolutely. Um, Jari Evans, I absolutely agree with. I think I would argue that Jari Evans is one of the top 10 guards of all time. If you're in
easily.
that argument, if you have that on your resume, certainly four-time first team All-Pro, protected Drew Brees for a half decade of excellence, was
Yeah.
part of one of the greatest offenses of all time. There were two seasons where he never gave up a single sack. Um,
Yeah.
which for a guard is certainly impressive. I think he's definitely deserving of being a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Hmm.
Um, the other guys I would go that I don't think you mentioned, Antonio Gates and Adam Vinatieri.
No.
Adam Vinatieri has to be in the first
No.
ballot Hall of Fame by
No.
any means.
No. I look more than anybody else. Two Super Bowls that we have is as a result of Adam Vinatieri. But it's not now. He can't be in now. You don't take him over Reggie Wayne. You don't take him over to Torrey Holt. Not right now. Not right now. Next year, 100%.
Whole, I
You
agree.
don't.
Whole, I agree. I don't agree with Reggie Wayne, and here's why.
No,
For a
no,
decade,
no.
Reggie Wayne, and I get, you have Marvin Harrison as your other
Mm-hmm.
receiver.
Mm-hmm.
I have actually made this argument before that I think Marvin Harrison is slightly overrated, and I think that partially that has to do with Peyton Manning. I'm not gonna mention that as far as the conversation today.
Mm-hmm.
However, I do think Reggie Wayne had a certain ceiling on his resume compared to other wide receivers in his time. Now, unfortunately, and hear me out, in other years, I would probably put Reggie Wayne. If this was last year, I would certainly put Reggie Wayne, right? Because he was
Okay.
still one of the top 3 to 5 receivers in probably the most loaded decade of receivers ever, right?
Okay. Sure.
But this year, you're talking about comparing him to a guy who had 22 sacks in a season,
Okay.
a guy who is by far the best linebacker in the league for an entire decade, a guard who's part of one of the greatest offenses ever, the league's all-time
Okay.
leading scorer. And then if as far as the other three, Antonio Gates, Torrey Holt, and Earl Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
Torrey Holt, all right, is one of only two players in NFL history to have 1,300 yards. I think it was 6 or 7 straight seasons. The
Yeah,
only
yeah,
other
yeah, blah
player to
blah
do
blah,
it.
blah blah blah. We know that stuff. We know that
So
stuff. I'm
yes,
asking why not Reggie Wayne?
because at the end of the day, there are 7 spots. So if you're asking me to put him above a guy who has 22 sacks in a season as a four-time All-Pro,
Not asking that.
122 sacks all time, one of the
Okay,
greatest tight ends ever, one of the greatest guards ever, one of the greatest
okay,
linebackers primes ever, one of the
okay.
greatest, uh, the
Receivers.
greatest kicker of all time, and one of
Okay,
the
yeah,
greatest primes at a safety ever, and Torrey
yeah,
Holt,
yeah.
which
No, no. See,
then
see.
you
This is
cannot
why
tell
this is
me
why I
that
disagree.
he's
No,
in the
no.
Hall.
This is why I disagree. When you look at that point in time, when you look at Reggie Wayne, think about this. Peyton Manning is coming to the end of his career when Reggie Wayne could have been the guy. Could have
Sure.
been the guy. You look at that 2008, 2000,
9 season.
9 run when they went to that Super Bowl. You don't go to the Super Bowl without Reggie Wayne. You
Sure.
don't go to that Super Bowl without Reggie Wayne. Your run game was non-existent. You had a defense with Robert Mattis likes, and you had that type of game running. If you don't have Reggie Wayne, you don't go to the Super Bowl.
Sure.
And we think about and look at the film 2009 Saints. We think that Peyton Manning had a bad game. You know Reggie Wayne had three people over him on 75% of the plays that he ran. Three
I
people over him
I get
at one.
I
Wait, wait,
100%
wait, wait.
get
Let,
you.
let me finish. Let me finish. Three people over him. You transition into Andrew Luck. We talk about Andrew Luck having a good career, and we wish that he would have played longer. You know why
Absolutely.
he had such a great start in his career?
Reggie
You know
Wayne.
why he had Reggie Wayne by him.
Sure.
You look at all the receivers that were able to be groomed within that Indianapolis Colts locker room. Why? You had Reggie Wayne. You look
Sure.
at the Colts right now. When Jeff Saturday was a head coach, he hired Reggie Wayne. Out of all players, he could have hired Marvin Harrison, this person, that person. Why? Reggie Wayne was smart enough to groom these guys. And here's the other thing. And I'll say this for Earl Thomas. This is why I put Rodney Harrison above Earl Thomas, without question. This guy is his first time as a finalist, right? Let's take a look at Earl Thomas's career. When we look at his prime, 4 or 5 years, give or take, 4 or 5 years.
Sure.
Luke Kuechly's entire career was his prime. Jared Allen, over 90% of his career was his
Sure.
prime. Reggie Wayne, over 90% of his career was his
Sure.
prime. Maybe not 90%, 75%. Fine. This guy played 5 seasons and he was a great safety. No doubt. Okay? Great safety. You look at Rodney Harrison, Patriots don't win any Super Bowl if you don't have Rodney Harrison.
Sure.
From 2003 and on, you don't have a Super Bowl if you don't have Rodney
Sure.
Harrison. You look at those Chargers in those days. You don't have Rodney Harrison, you don't win games. He was that destructive as a player. We talk about Junior Seau being that home of that defense. Look at the Pittsburgh games. 94 AFC Championship. Look at that game. Rodney Harrison was making every play. Rodney Harrison was coming on every single zone coverage. He was coming down on it.
Sure.
That's why I'm saying Earl Thomas. Look, he's definitely, and the same argument you use for Reggie Wayne not being in this year. I'm saying I can't keep Earl Thomas in this year. I'm not taking. I'm not gonna be taking Earl Thomas over a guy that took an organization that if you don't have Reggie Wayne, that organization is a 2-14 team
So
every
you're
season.
going to tell me that you would rather take a guy who
Hmm.
single-handedly, and I get Cam Chancellor was also on that unit, but this is a guy who lined up several times single-handedly against some of the best tight ends in football. We're talking Travis Kelce's of the world. We're talking the
Okay.
Rob Gronkowski's of the world. You're telling me you would rather
First of all,
take
that's a lie. First of
Rodney
all, that's a
Harrison.
lie. First of all, that's a lie. First of all, that's a lie. Watch the tape. Earl Thomas didn't go up single-handedly. Watch that Super Bowl. Not one player Earl Thomas came up one-on-one on Rob Gronkowski. That's
He did
not.
against
No,
Travis
come on.
Kelce several times. Rob Gronkowski,
Travis
less,
Kelsey
I will
wasn't
give
even in
you
his
that.
prime.
But
Not
he
in his prime. No, no. You're telling me you're going to use that argument without Mahomes? Was Travis Kelsey without Mahomes Travis Kelsey?
he was still putting up 13. He was not 13, excuse me.
No.
He was still putting up 900 yards a game in his first 4 seasons.
But is no 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 no. But tell me this: is 900-yard Travis Kelsey and 1450 Travis Kelsey the same person? No. Is
Sure.
Travis Kelsey with Alex Smith and Travis Kelsey with Patrick Mahomes the same person? No. You can't give that argument right now. Look, Earl Thomas was a great safety, but those three guys
Sure.
made the Legion of Boom. Earl Thomas was in the Legion of Boom. Those three guys made the Legion of Boom.
Sure.
See,
But let me
no,
ask you
no.
this. Okay, let me ask you this. Under that
Go ahead.
circumstance, right? We can bring it we could bring it up with a lot of some of the greatest teams, right? You brought up the example with Earl Thomas about having Cam Chancellor and Richard Sherman and Brandon Browner next to him. would you make that? Couldn't you make that same argument with someone like a Reggie Wayne when it comes to the
Mhm.
fact that he's playing around Marvin Harrison, Edgar and James, Jeff Saturday, Peyton
First
Manning,
of all,
all these guys?
first of all, let me say this: Edgerrin James left the Colts in 2005.
Sure. Well, you
Reggie
still had
Wayne
Joseph
was
Adai, who was a Pro Bowl running back perennially.
right, but is he Edgerrin James? No. Let's get
Sure.
that out
Well,
of the way. Okay. Secondly, I'm saying this, man. Edgerrin James. Look, when you look at Marvin Harrison's entire career, he had Peyton Manning his
mhm,
entire career. You look at Jerry Rice. You had Joe Montana and Steve Young, two Hall of Fame
sure.
quarterbacks back to back. Look at Tim Brown, right? Didn't I'll use Tim Brown here. He didn't have a Hall of Fame quarterback by him, but he made every single play count.
Sure.
Reggie Wayne did that every year. Every year, Reggie Wayne made every single play that counted. You
Sure.
have Andrew Luck, who, let's be honest, when he was drafted from Stanford, it wasn't like the entire league was all of a sudden throwing flowers and
Sure.
celebrating him like a god. Everybody was on him. But
Sure.
he came in that first season, he played lights out. Why? You have Reggie Wayne. See, that's my whole thing behind this. We talk about Torrey Holt, and he had 1,300 yards perennially for 6 or 7 straight seasons.
Well, that's my
Right.
argument, though. I would give. Torrey Holt did
Yeah.
that same thing when he had Isaac
I'm not
Bruce
arguing
and Kurt
that.
Warner
See,
with him.
what you're
My
saying is,
argument with Torrey Holt would be is the
go
fact
ahead.
that the latter half of his prime, he was playing in Jacksonville with very lackluster quarterbacks and still putting up the same numbers. So my question
Sure.
is,
Okay.
you took Peyton Manning, and we can agree that Peyton Manning was the one of the top two QBs in the league for a decade, if not number one, correct?
Easily. Yes.
Right. If you gave Reggie Wayne for the first half of his career,
Hmm.
we can look this up. Let me pull up the stats real quick.
Sure.
Um, yeah, Reggie Wayne had
Hmm.
in two from two. Let's start off with about 2004, right? That's when he started
Sure.
becoming a big player. 12-10, 10-55. In 2006, he had 13-10. He led the league in receiving yards in 15-10 when Marvin Harrison was starting to diminish in production.
Hmm.
11-45, 12-64, 13-55,
Hmm.
9-60, 13-55, right?
Okay. Yeah.
You're telling me that
Hmm.
as a second receiver, that a guy like Torrey Holt who can put up 1,310 yards with Kurt Warner,
Hmm.
who as great of a quarterback as he was, we can agree he was not nearly as good as Peyton Manning, and then
Okay.
proceeds to go to a Jacksonville and still put up the same numbers. You're
Hmm.
telling me that that player, if he
Hmm.
was not given some quarterback like Peyton Manning, he would have put up 1,600 yards a year even
Hmm.
next to a Marvin Harrison, or you're telling me
No,
that
no, no.
he would
Yash,
not
Yash,
be able
Yash.
to
Here's
put
the
that
thing. Here's the thing.
even with Marvin Harrison or even without him?
Look, look, look. Here's my argument. Okay. You're misinterpreting what I'm saying. I'm not saying you take off Torrey Holt and replace him with Reggie Wayne. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you take in both Reggie Wayne and Torrey Holt. I'm not see. I'll be the number one bystander to say Torrey Holt has to be in this year. For
Sure,
him not to be in the past 5 years is ridiculous. Okay,
absolutely.
I'm 100% on that. All I'm saying is this Reggie Wayne deserves it more now than Earl Thomas. That's my argument. That's what I'm saying.
So you,
I'm not saying take Torrey Holt off. I'm saying Earl Thomas is not deserving now, right now, over Reggie Wayne. Reggie Wayne gets in now. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying take Torrey
sure.
Holt off. Okay,
So
that's what I'm saying.
so my argument to you would be, who do you think was then more dominant? Would you say that Earl Thomas was more dominant in his prime than Reggie Wayne at his respective position, or no? And who is better at their specific position in comparison to
Yeah.
their peers?
Look, I would say this. It's a good point. Look, Earl Thomas, when he was playing, was a top five safety at his prime every year.
Right.
Okay. I'm not going to say he was the number one safety. I don't know when I can say he was the number one safety in his career at any point in time during his career. I don't know if I can say he was a number one. But I will
Sure.
say this: was he consistent as Reggie Wayne was? I mean, I think I had the stats up. Let me take a look at it.
No, he was. I'll answer that for
Okay.
you. He was
I mean,
from
let's look at it, right?
yeah.
From 2004 to 2010, he had consecutive 1,000 yard seasons. 2011, he's 33 years old, by the way. 960 yards. 34 years old as a wide receiver comes in 1355, 5 touchdowns, 106 receptions for 195 targets. He was balling out.
Right.
When you look at it from yards per catch, if I'm not wrong, he had 12.6 yards per catch. Yards from scrimmage 1350. This guy was a baller at 34 years old. You're telling me Earl
Absolutely.
Thomas could have played at that level at 34 years old? I'm not sure.
Well, that the reason, and that actually that's an interesting thing you brought up actually, and that's honestly probably the reason why I would say that the committee holds Earl Thomas away from the Hall of Fame. And that's actually honestly an interesting question because I
He
think,
had that
well,
incident.
yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
one part of this that we're Akilesh and I not exactly mentioned because I think we're looking really from just a football standpoint. I guess that kind of brings us to a more broad question: is Earl
Yeah.
Thomas didn't end up, he's probably not going to end up in the Hall of Fame because of the incidents he's had off the field, mainly the whole incident with his family and the
Something I
run from the
remember.
cops
Yeah.
he had involving, what a poisoning threatening to poison his kids and whatnot. Uh,
Yeah.
and obviously, both Akhilesh and I think all of our watcher viewers can agree that that is a horrendous
Act.
accusation and thing to do for certain. Um, but that's the question I would ask. Given that Earl Thomas hasn't officially been, you know, indicted or anything like that, because of how badly that accusation and how badly that action of Earl Thomas
Mm,
represents badly represents the NFL, would you say that that should hold against him being in the Hall of Fame? Because he's still on the ballot at the end of the day.
yeah. See, look, this is a topic that it's really tough, right? Because this is the way I'll look at it. Now, I'm not a baseball, fanatic like you are,
Mhm.
but I will say this. I think this is his name, Barry Bonds,
Yeah,
the guy from the Giants. He took some sort of
steroids.
steroids. He's not in the Hall of Fame, right, of
Right.
baseball currently. Now, I don't know your outlook on this, but this is what I'm going to say. Is what he did horrendous? Yes. Is it immoral beyond belief? Yeah. Horrible. That just shouldn't happen in a man's life. But this is not, you know, a political party or a representative of the in the entire country. This is football.
Right.
It's not the Human Decency Hall of Fame. It's not the Human Rights Effort Hall of Fame. It's the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Right.
But a football player is just as important as the man you are being that football player.
Hmm.
In this case, I would say it's going to hold against him big time. Am I saying don't put him in the Hall of Fame at all? No. But I am going to say it holds against him big time.
I agree.
Okay? Look,
100%.
I get it's a football player and it's a football thing, but at the same time, Chad Ochocinco, and I'll use Chad here, Chad Johnson. You look at that tape. First of all, Chad Johnson, look at the passion. When the Bengals lost that day and Shannon Sharp is all. By the way, Mr. Shannon Sharp, I don't like Joe Burrow, but you are doing that man wrong. You are doing that man wrong. He doesn't deserve that much hate. Now, I don't like quarterbacks, but you got a special hate for quarterbacks. I mean, you got sharp hate. You know what I'm saying? Like we got hate, but you got sharp hate. But I mean, he. If you get what I mean,
That's
he's
the
not really
fun
sharp, but
voice.
you mean like he's got sharp hate though. Like you take that arrow and you want to bow an arrow with like he goes for the not even for the red dot. He wants to pierce that red dot and open up the entire thing and make sure nothing remains. He's a sharp, sharp hate. But he cries. He looked at Devontae Adams route running and he cried. Like that's passion. Like your tears are flowing when you look at a guy playing football. Like that's passion.
Right.
But you can't do what you did off the field. What you did off the field, you just can't you can't take that in. At least not anymore. You as a man is just as important as you are as a football player. That's why, Chad Johnson is incredible as a football player. but I'm not sure he can go in the Hall of Fame because of those antics that he did. But he's with like you talk about the top 10 receivers of all time. Chad Johnson's in that list.
Well,
Who
I
do you take
mean,
over him?
this
Who do you
is the
take over
interest,
him?
right?
And
Well,
I'll say this: the same argument that I said for Reggie Wayne, that you said for Torrey Holt going into Jacksonville. What quarterback did Chad Johnson have that was respectable enough?
well, Carson
In the
Palmer was a pretty respectable
No,
receiver.
no, no, no. You're putting them at the same class of Andrew Luck,
No,
Peyton
that's
Manning,
fair. Yeah,
and
yeah,
Kurt
yeah.
Warner.
That's fair.
No, no, not at all. And look what he did. Look at what he did. And the same thing I'll
Put some
say for
respect
Terrell
on my
Owens.
man's name, though. Carson Palmer. I'm gonna defend my
I
guy
don't
here.
care. I don't know. Carson Palmer was a ding dong who couldn't throw for his life when it mattered most. We know it. Everybody knows it. He couldn't do it when it
The
mattered
man
most.
led the
He couldn't do it
Cardinals
when it
to
mattered
the
most.
Arizona freaking Cardinals to the
Yeah.
NFC Championship game. Yes,
With
they did
Bruce
get blown
Arians,
out by the
with Larry
Panthers.
Fitzgerald, with everybody else, yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. With Bruce Arians and with everybody else, yeah, he did. And you know why? Let's mention that. You know why he did? The same reason why we criticize Kurt Warner for being I'm just gonna dink it off here, dink it off here, dink it
Right.
off here. That was the Bruce
That
Arians
I yes,
offense.
that I will defer to that, but
Okay,
just put some
so
respect on mine.
no,
I'm not gonna let you
no.
disrespect
Carson,
Carson's name.
look, Carson Palmer is literally a Kirk Cousins, but a inferior form of Kirk Cousins.
No,
Let's be
no,
honest.
no, 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 no,
Yeah,
no, no.
yes, he is.
Carson
Yes, he
Palmer's
is.
like Carson Palmer's like Dak Prescott if he wasn't a Dallas Cowboy. Let's put it that way.
Oh no, Dak Prescott's better than Carson Palmer. I would take Dak Prescott over Carson Palmer
Well, Dak
any
Prescott
day,
has had
any
his
time of the
MVP
week,
moments. Carson Palmer's
anytime.
also had his MVP moments. Carson Palmer
Oh, really?
was the leader
See,
in the
the
MVP
problem
race
is this.
in
I
2014
can't
before
count
he
the
got
number
hurt.
of times Dak Prescott's had MVP moments. I can count the number of times with my 10 fingers, number of times Carson Palmer's had
All
MVP
right, count
moments.
him, count
That's
him,
the problem.
count him.
I can probably give you, I can probably say four MVP moments in his career. I could probably give you four MVP moments in his career.
And you're saying
With
Dak
Dak
hasn't
Prescott,
had a
with
single
Dak Prescott
finger.
just over the past 5 years, I can give you more than 10. Easily more than 10.
So you're
Easily more
talking,
than
hold
10.
up, you're counting games. I'm talking about seasons. Carson Palmer has been an MVP
Seasons,
frontrunner at least
seasons,
4 times in his career.
oh, seasons. I'll give you three maximum on that one. Seasons, Carson Palmer seasons. And okay, Dak Prescott last season you could have.
Yeah.
You really could have. Okay, last season you could have. Carson Palmer played 20 more seasons than Dak Prescott. So I would probably say Dak Prescott right now itself has probably had two MVP seasons. Right now itself has had
Carson
two
Palmer
MVP
had two
seasons.
too. 2014,
No,
2015.
exactly. Hence my point. Dak Prescott's not even halfway into his career, and he's already 10 times better. Carson Palmer is a ding dong who couldn't throw it when his life mattered most. We
Akilish
know
knows
it.
I'm defending
Everybody knows
Carson
it.
Palmer because I'm a former quarterback, so I will defend quarterbacks that I had some sort of
Yeah, yeah,
liking
yeah.
to for a
Hey,
while.
how about Jamarcus Russell, Mr. LSU alumni? How
Yeah,
about
yeah,
Jamarcus Russell?
yeah. Yeah, yeah. We don't talk about that.
You're
But
welcome.
regardless, when it comes to the Hall of Fame, yeah, I mean I would
Yes. All right, go ahead. Sorry, I'm sorry.
let
I'm
me
sorry.
guess, Chargers game.
Yeah, we did it. We did it. Everybody thought we were gonna lose when we were down 21-13 at halftime. But guess what? Bam! That's what we do.
Yes.
That's what we do. Jim
Well,
Harbaugh
for
football.
those
That's
of
what we do.
who don't know, because of our time constraints, and because of the fact that Akilesh has been taking his finals the last few days, and I've been on jet lag, we are doing the podcast, yes, while a game is going on currently.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
sue us, but regardless,
I don't care. I don't care. All I know is them 49ers are not looking as good as this Jim Harbaugh's team. That's all I know. Anyways, moving on.
moving on. Yeah, indeed. I will say this though, it is an interesting conversation involving kind of like the Hall of Fame kind of discussion around like Earl Thomas, especially being, the law. I'll give a better example, I would say, than Barry Bonds, because at least that has something to do with the game. I give the example of Pete Rose when he gambled, Shoeless Joe Jackson when he was involved in gambling with the 1919 White Sox. These were things that kind of crossed the legal line, especially Pete Rose. Even in football, we can use a guy like O.J. Simpson, for instance. And the
Yeah.
question would be, he never got indicted, but just because of how much media attention his case got, does he deserve being out of the Hall of Fame and something like that, right? And that's, I think, a similar question that definitely is going to be asked with Earl Thomas. And I honestly think it's a good transition and a couple other players that we are going to talk about. So yeah, as we go next, we're gonna do a little bit of a kind of a quick round of NFL players, Akhilesh, as far as which players do you think should be in the Hall of Fame and which do you not, give a little bit of a breakdown as far as quick breakdown as far as why, and I'll give mine as far as that the same way. Um,
Okay.
as far as the first player goes, we're gonna start off with one of my favorite players, Navarro Bowman.
Ooh, that's a good one. Um, you know what, man? Look, he was really dominant, but he had his injuries. I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say no. I know he's my boy, from the Chargers. He's our linebackers coach, but I'm gonna say no.
Yeah, I would agree with you as much as I would want to put Navarro Bowman in. He's one of the guys who actually got me into watching football. Unfortunately, I cannot. He unfortunately
Too
just did
short.
not play long enough, only eight
Too short.
seasons, although his 8 seasons were amazing, four first team All Pros.
Yeah.
There's an argument to be made in the senior committee, but as far as just regular voting goes, probably not. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And give me one sec.
All right. These are tough, man. Navarro Bowman was a good one to pull out. That was
I
a
know,
tough one.
man.
That was a tough one.
Yeah.
That was a good one. Whew.
How do you spell
Because
Oh, there we go. Navarro Bowman.
actually, if you guys actually watch the tape, Navarro and Fred Warner are the only, or not Fred Warner, sorry, Patrick Willis are the only two linebackers in the same season to be All Pros,
Absolutely, yes.
which is first team that do, not even second team,
And
first
these
team
guys
All
were
Pros,
complete running backs in every way possible. I mean, you're talking about guys who could uh
linebackers,
say it again?
linebackers. He said running backs.
Oh, I'm sorry. Linebackers, yeah. Who could, they could cover, they could tackle, they had,
Amazing.
extremely, extremely versatile. They had the ability to play safety, extremely athletic. They were doing all
Yeah,
linebackers in every
yeah.
specific way. Um, the next what's it called? The next
Player.
Yeah. Give me one sec.
This is fun, man. I like this quick run.
Yeah. The next player I'm going to ask you is actually going to be none other than Eli Manning. Given unfortunately he is in the Hall of
Oh,
Fame
no.
debate this year.
No way, Jose. No way. Eli Manning is not worth a Hall of Famer. He won a Super Bowl over us twice. Fine. He didn't win. We gave it to you. You had the luckiest catch of all time. No way, Jose. Eli Manning is not a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And any propaganda that ESPN talks about, because of course it's New York City, um, you know,
No.
apologies to any person who lives in New York City. Not really.
Actually, no, I don't care, bro. You got the Giants, you got the Jets, you got the Brooklyn Nets, you got the New York Knicks, and everybody in New York knows the Knicks are not going to win the championship. The only good thing you guys got is pizza, and I respect it.
And look, for me personally, I hate the Giants. So, yeah, Eli Manning. This is all I gotta say. Eli Manning led the league in interceptions more times than he led the league in touchdown passes. He should not have won either of his Super Bowl MVPs. First time it should have been Michael Strahan. Second time it should have, or David Tyree. Second time it should have been Justin Tuck, who had 3 sacks against Tom Brady. Um, yeah, he should not have won either time. Quite frankly, he got carried by his defense both times. Never single MVP vote. Let me ask you this: would you put Nick Foles in the Hall of Fame if he had two Super Bowls and two MVPs? Would you put Joe Flacco in the Hall of Fame if he had two MVPs and two Super Bowls and two Super Bowl MVPs? Probably not.
Yes,
So why is it that
yes.
Eli Manning
No, no, no,
ends up
no.
getting
Joe
into the
Flacco goes in. Joe Flacco goes
You
in.
think so?
Joe Flacco goes in. Look at this. Look at this. Okay, this is all I'm going to say. Eli Manning has had what in his entire career 3 or 4 times in the playoffs. You look at Joe Flacco. They made the playoffs consistently with him as a starting quarterback. Every single time he was the one who was making the plays that mattered most, right? I would say Joe Flacco. I mean, if he took 2 Super Bowls, 2 Super Bowl MVPs, look at the way he's played. He played in Cleveland last season. I think he is. Now Nick Foles, different story. He was never a starting quarterback
Right.
for an entire season, but Joe Flacco, yeah.
So, yeah, I 100% agree with you. Like I said, with Eli Manning, there's just, but with Joe Flacco, honestly, that is an interesting conversation because there is an argument to be made given his first 5 seasons. He was definitely a top five quarterback. Um, but I still think the committee definitely would not put Joe Flacco just because he doesn't play in New York City. Eli
Yeah,
Manning gets the back benefactor of being that he's a Manning and the fact that he played in New York City.
yeah,
That's why he's in
that's
the
true.
Hall of Fame if he is.
That's true.
And it will be an absolute travesty, but chances are he's probably going to end up being in the
Yeah.
Hall of Fame. The next player I have to ask you is actually a player on the same topic of Earl Thomas, is Antonio Brown.
No.
Really?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The stats are amazing that he had with the Steelers. Catches that he made, plays that he made, absolutely miraculous. But no, he had too many antics. See, and this is not a Terrell Owens situation. Terrell Owens necessarily didn't do horrendous things off the field. Well,
Absolutely.
let's just take a look at that, right? Not horrendous things off the field. He had, yes, on field quite a lot, right? He had the whole popcorn and this and that, and locker room cancer and all this, everything. But he was third all time in receptions, third all time in receiving yards, just behind Jerry Rice and Randy Moss. So yeah, that we're not gonna apply the same logic. And Terrell Owens didn't, he wasn't a 1 year semifinalist and he got it. No, he had to wait years, and that to the level that he was as a player for him, that's disrespectful. I'm not putting Antonio Brown and Terrell Owens in the same conversation. Terrell Owens is like Antonio Brown lives in a $1 million house in the Bay Area. Terrell Owens lives in a $2 million mansion in Texas. That's the difference where I'm putting these both guys in. It's not even close.
Let me put it this way. We talked about the argument about soft players earlier on in this conversation, and I mentioned Antonio Brown actually. Um, as far as Antonio Brown goes, right? Or let's start off with Terrell Owens. Terrell Owens was a media nightmare. Well, not media nightmare. In fact, he gave them a lot of money actually, but he was a walking storyline. He was a walking newspaper headline, right? You talk about the headlines with the weightlifting off the field when he had the Donovan McNabb beef. You talk about a lot of the times beefing with quarterbacks and coaches and all of that. But this is also the man who played with 9 screws in his leg, or three, I don't remember what number, honestly. I think it was 9 screws in his leg, and had 121 yards in a Super Bowl against the New England Patriots, a New England Patriots team that that was coming off of if I'm not mistaken, the longest consecutive streak of wins in NFL history,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's how good he was, right? And this guy didn't have legal problems like Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown, I don't want to make him look, I don't want to make a player look like, he's Satan reincarnated. But this is a man who, granted, had some really, really serious off the field issues when it came to legal trouble. He was accused of rape. And at the end of the day, we talk about the NFL using a lot of this against players when it comes to the fact that they have to represent the league in some sort of sense. They have to be an ambassador. At the end
Hmm.
of the day, this kind of, fights against him. Now, from a pure football standpoint, he's 100%
Undoubtedly,
first ballot Hall of Fame,
undoubtedly, exactly,
but
undoubtedly.
undoubtedly. And if your argument is that a player should be in the Hall of Fame because purely just because of his play on the football
Ability
field,
to
then
play,
he
yeah,
should be.
without a
But
doubt.
if not, he's probably not going to be. That's how I put it. The next player I'm going to ask you is going to be actually I'm going to kind of give you a quick run of a lot of different players right now. These are
Okay.
all running backs. Ricky Waters, Corey Dillon, Fred Taylor, Sean Alexander, Priest Holmes, and Eddie George. How many of these players do you think should be in the Hall of Fame and why?
You can't do that to me now. God, I don't even remember half the names you told. Can you go through it again?
So let's start off. We got Ricky Waters, who, by the
No.
way, my parents saw at the new Costco in Pleasanton like a few weeks ago. He was signing
Wow.
autographs, yeah. Um,
Oh, come
but
on.
apparently
That's
he
not
was signing them for on Joe Montana jerseys, which was interesting, but um,
They had Joe
still
Montana jerseys out?
something like that. I don't
Oh,
remember,
dude,
but,
that's not fair. That's not fair.
um, yeah. Then you
Okay,
got Corey
well,
Dillon. We got Fred Taylor, Sean
Okay.
Alexander, Priest Holmes, and Eddie George.
Corey Dillon. He's a Patriot too. Mm,
I love how you mentioned the Patriot.
uh, uh, he won a Super Bowl too with us. Freaking hell. Yeah. So Corey Dillon, Eddie George, Fred Taylor. Uh, who else? Wait. Eddie George, Fred Taylor.
Eddie George, Fred Taylor, Corey Dillon, Ricky Waters, Sean Alexander, and Priest Holmes.
Damn. Sean Alexander is in the Hall of Fame. Without a doubt. Okay. Um. Damn. I don't. I'm thinking about this a long time, but Eddie George is not in the Hall of Fame for
I agree
me.
with that. Eddie George, while great running back, he just did not have enough of a prime to put him in the
Exactly.
Hall of Fame.
Longe-
Did not
Longevity.
have enough numbers.
It's
Only
I
68
know it sounds
touchdowns.
ridiculous, but it's just longevity. Fred
Yeah.
Taylor, you know what? My guy was a beast on a horrible franchise. Fred Taylor deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I think so. I think I would prefer Taylor in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, Fred Taylor. Um, damn, Ricky Waters. Bro, these are not easy. God, good God, jeez. Sean Alexander's in the Hall of Fame. Um, Eddie George is not. Fred Taylor is for me.
To me, while you're thinking, I will give a couple of my opinions. What I'll say about Fred Taylor is, I think he's a Hall of Famer. I don't think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Um, he just
Sure.
doesn't have the numbers, I would say, to put him in the first ballot Hall of Fame category. Neither did he have the prime, but he does have longevity on his side.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
Frank Gore, longevity was so much on his side that he ended up getting 16, what he ended up second or third in
Yeah.
rushing yards
In
all
rushing
time
yards of all
by
time.
the end of this thing. Fred Taylor had a modest career as far as
But he's a
relatively
Hall of Famer.
speaking,
Yeah.
right. But I would not put him as far as a first ballot Hall of Famer because he was just never one of the best running backs in the league. But there is an argument to be made. I would put him as a Hall of Famer. Eddie George, I 100% agree with you. Sean Alexander, I also 100% agree with you. While his prime was too short, he had numbers
He's an
rivaling some of
MVP.
the,
He's an MVP. You
forget
know.
that. He had numbers rivaling some of the best running backs in a very, very short time, right? And he still had a, relatively speaking, a pretty decent prime, decently long prime for a running back. A running back usually, a Hall of Fame running back usually is their career is about 7 to 8 seasons. Sean Alexander played 9 seasons. Five of those seasons, he had double-digit touchdown numbers. Let me put this up if I remember correctly. Yeah, he had
Mm,
1,318 yards in his second
yeah.
season, 14 touchdowns, 16 touchdowns, 14 touchdowns, and 1,400 yards in year four, 1,616 in year five, 1,827 in year six, and an MVP. He
No.
finished his career with 100 touchdowns.
1827. Think about it. 1827. That is.
Yeah. So to me, there's an
Sean
argument to be
Alexander's
made
in.
why he should not be in the first ballot, but I would give him the advantage. But I would probably give him the advantage in probably, a year where there's less Hall of Fame competition, not this year. But I
Right.
would put him on the ballot.
Okay, I'm gonna finish off with this. Priest Holmes and Corey Dillon won't be making the Hall of Fame, or at least shouldn't, in my humble opinion. Ricky Waters is the only thing that I can't get my mind to, because when he was with San Francisco, '94, they don't win that San Francisco without him. He had
I
four
agree.
touchdowns in that Super Bowl. Okay, I'll give that. But there wasn't a moment in time where he was the number one running back in the league. There wasn't a moment in time where you could say he was a definitive top five running back in the league.
I agree.
You know
Given the
what?
fact that he just
Look, if he's
never,
at Costco in Pleasanton, dude, I will come and I will get a jersey signed from you. But you're not a Hall of Famer. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I can't.
Ricky, I'm talking to you directly right now. You're my guy. I love you. All right. You're awesome. You were an awesome football player. You're one of my favorite football players to watch when you were with the Niners, even though I wasn't alive when you were playing with us.
Yeah.
Um, but Unfortunately,
And
I just
and,
don't
and
think
also you weren't alive when they won the Super Bowl. We'll continue.
I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you in the next few days. You're lucky I
Yeah,
don't have a response. But yeah, when it comes to Ricky Waters, um, again, the same thing with Fred Taylor. He did not have the type of longevity that Fred Taylor had. He had 78 touchdowns and about 10,600 yards. To me, he's just on the outside looking in. You can make an argument even he's a Hall of Famer. He's not a first ballot Hall of Famer for sure. To me, my rule is you got to have at least two All Pro seasons, first team All Pro seasons, in order to be considered a Hall of Famer and first ballot Hall of Famer at any position. That's my rule. He just does not have that, uh, Ricky Waters. So I cannot put him in the first ballot Hall of Fame conversation. Probably wouldn't put him in the Hall of Fame conversation unless he had 80 touchdowns, which he just doesn't have. Corey Dillon, I 100% agree with you. Priest Holmes just had too short of a prime, and he does
yeah,
not have the same numbers that Sean Alexander did.
not even close. Yeah.
So yeah, I honestly agree with you fully on all six of your things. The final player I would ask you if he's a Hall of Famer, and this I think is going to be the most interesting one because I've actually not heard your opinion, believe it or not, on this. Matthew
Okay.
Stafford.
100% Hall of Famer. Without a shred of doubt in my mind, he's 100% Hall of Famer. There's no doubt in my mind. There's no doubt in my mind. You give any argument you want. You can give any argument you want. I don't care. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a Hall of Famer. 100% Hall of Famer. There's no doubt. You can do whatever you want. You can
I'm
look
trying to
at
find
your
my
blank.
Colin Kaepernick jersey. If you didn't notice, right in the background, I was taking a knee because I'm protesting Akilesh's statement just now.
Oh, really? Yeah. Please, tell me. Tell me why the man that took a Detroit Lions team that didn't have a quarterback for over 5 decades, that didn't have any hope for over 5 decades, that had a Calvin Johnson who would have never become Calvin Johnson without a guy bombing throws, toughest quarterback you'll ever see on a football field, and a Super Bowl champion.
Without pleasure. Okay.
Go
Number
ahead.
one, Matthew Stafford's not as tough as he puts it out to be. Call
Oh,
me a
okay.
Rams hater. Call me a Matthew Stafford hater.
Yeah.
Frankly, I've been a Matthew Stafford hater since he
Your
came out
entire
of
life.
college.
Yeah.
Um,
Your entire life.
but I'll put that out there. All right. Matthew Stafford, he's not
Hmm.
as tough as they say he is. All right. This
Okay.
man plays through
Give me
broken bones.
examples.
I'll
Give me
give him that.
examples.
There are a
Give
lot
me
of NFL
examples.
players who play through broken bones and don't have enough NFL film mic'd up moments out there.
Oh,
All
really?
right.
Really? What quarterback?
Drew
Go ahead.
Brees.
Go ahead.
Drew
Oh,
Brees.
Drew Brees is tougher than Matthew Stafford? Are you
Absolutely. Drew
joking?
Brees played
Are
through
you joking? Drew Brees had arguably a top five guard for literally his entire
and
career.
Drew Brees took way more broken, and he had way more broken ribs and fragments of broken ribs or ribs in his body than
Mhm.
Matthew Stafford could have ever, well, not wished for, but Matthew
Really?
Stafford could have ever
Really?
imagined having.
How many sacks has Drew Brees had compared to Matthew Stafford? This I don't know
I
this.
agree. Yeah, no. You're right. You're right
Yeah,
about
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
will give
So
you that.
see,
But
see, here's the
let's
difference. No, 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 no,
all
no,
right.
no.
But
Hold up, hold up.
that's where I'm
This is
getting
the
at. Hold
difference.
up. I
No,
will
no, no,
get
no.
at that.
Hold up. This is the difference, though. I can have broken ribs much more than you, fair. But being sacked again and again at the same spot where I broke my ribs before, or I may break my ribs again, is a completely different story, my guy. Completely
So let's
different
give the
story. Go
numbers
ahead,
then.
go ahead, go ahead,
Let's
go
give
ahead,
the numbers then, right?
go
You
ahead.
want to talk about numbers. Drew Brees had a good O line, bad O line.
Mhm.
Frankly, it doesn't matter when the fact of the matter is these are the numbers with Matthew
Oh,
Stafford. All right.
golly gee, here we
2000,
go.
2009,
Mm,
37.1 QBR. He's a rookie. All right.
mm,
Let's get
Oh, okay.
behind him.
Pause. Who is his receiver core?
Calvin Johnson. Let's
Receiver core?
no
No,
no.
no, no, no,
Actually,
no.
I'm gonna get at that. All right. I'll get at
Go
that.
ahead. Go ahead.
Sure. Matthew Stafford,
Mm-hmm.
if you look at his first 9, 10 seasons in the NFL, all right,
Mm, mm,
there is only 2 seasons where he had a 65 QBR or higher.
mm,
Okay. Drew Brees
mm,
has had a 65 QBR once, lower than a 65 QBR since
mm,
2006, just once.
mm.
Right.
So,
That
okay,
that stat by
before we go
itself
on,
is not indicative of play calling. That's not indicative of offensive line. In fact,
mm,
gets away from the whole idea of, oh my God, you're being sacked because your O line's terrible. it kind of
Mm.
differentiates sacks based on, how long you take in the pocket. Are you
I
taking
see.
time to play make? Yes,
Oh,
absolutely.
oh,
Now,
this
I
is
will,
this is really nice. No, 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 no. Hold the whole up. Okay. Are we really comparing Drew Brees? Okay.
yes, and I'll
Like,
explain why.
so,
Because Matthew
so
Stafford and
we're
Drew Brees are
comparing
actually
Drew
more
Brees to
similar
Matthew
than you
Stafford
think.
as our comparison for the Hall of Fame. Is that what we're doing right
Say
now?
it again?
So we're taking Drew Brees' career and Matthew Stafford's career and we're putting for the Hall of Fame. Is that what we're doing right now?
No, 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 no. What I will
Then then
no, but here's why I'm making that argument. All right. And the
mm,
reason why Matthew Stafford and Drew Brees are comparable in this instance is particularly
mm,
because of the argument that I've heard so many people talk about when it comes to Stafford. That
mm,
Stafford has never had a great defense until they came to the Rams. Well,
mm,
frankly, the year that they won a Super Bowl, they had the 16th best defense, and I'll give Stafford credit. He did help them win the Super Bowl. I know this is a
mm.
fact. I'm a Niners fan. He tore us apart
Okay,
in the NFC Championship. I'll give him credit
okay,
where credit's due, right?
okay.
But here's the
Uh-huh.
fact of the matter, all right?
Mm,
Like I said,
mm,
the first 9 seasons where Matthew Stafford was a quarterback for the Detroit Lions, excuse me,
mm,
all right?
mhm,
41 touchdowns, 20
mm.
touchdowns, 29 touchdowns. This is from 2011, all right? Because the first two
Okay.
years he was really injured and didn't play that much. 41
Mm,
touchdowns, 20 touchdowns, 29 touchdowns, 22 touchdowns, 32
mm,
touchdowns, 24 touchdowns. All right.
mm,
In 2015 and 2016, this is an argument I've heard a lot, is the fact that Matthew Stafford played in a lot of one possession games and he was
mm,
keeping his team in the game. Well,
mm.
here's the difference, right? Matthew Stafford had the had the last possession 7 times in those 2 years.
Oh,
Okay?
okay,
And
okay,
of
okay.
those 7 times, he
Mm,
failed to convert all but once. And that one time,
mm,
ladies and gentlemen, was in
mm,
overtime, where all he
mm,
had to do was get into field goal territory to win the game.
mm.
Okay.
Okay.
Whereas Drew Brees, with making similar numbers, right? 5,000
Mm.
yards. Oh, right. I'm sorry. I forgot. 5,000 is greater than 4,000, right?
Ah, okay. So you want to play
Yes,
this game? Go
yes.
ahead, go
Now
ahead,
we
go ahead.
get
You want
it.
to play this game? You want to play this game?
We're having a little math lesson here. Take it
Okay.
back to stats. Mr. Kelly, if you're here, hi. But
Everybody found out your final was online, by the way. Just.
yeah, but um,
Mm. Okay.
Drew
Are you
Brees
done? Are you
had
done? Oh, yeah, yeah,
5,000
no.
yards.
Are
He
you done
had
with your whole
70
selection?
QBR and a much better completion percentage during that time. They were going 7-9 every year, whereas Matthew Stafford went 5-11. One year he went 9-7 because, oh
Seven
yeah,
and
they
nine
had a
every
pretty good
year with the
defense. Oh
Saints?
yeah, I forgot. The
Wait, wait.
Rams or the Lions had the number 3 defense in 2014. But let's
Mm.
look at Matthew Stafford's stats in 2014,
Go
which was
ahead.
supposed to be his best year with the Lions, right? They performed really, really well. Oh,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. He made the Pro Bowl having 22 touchdowns, 12
Mm.
interceptions. By the way,
Mm.
PFF actually talked about how he had 29 turnover worthy plays that year. 29, in addition to his 12
So,
interceptions.
so we're getting at this turnover worthy plays. Let's
Yes.
stop. Okay, you know what, Yash? Let's pause this whole thing right now. Drew Brees had Sean Payton, one of the most creative offensive minds for his entire career. The
Sure.
Detroit Lions didn't have a single winning season in 9 years prior to Drew Brees or Matthew Stafford getting drafted. You know what? 2 years later, they were in the playoffs. Okay, let's start off with that. Number one. Number two, you look at Drew Brees over his entire career. He had reliable tight end, reliable receivers, reliable offensive line.
Reliable tight end. He had reliable tight end only with Jimmy Graham. Take
No,
that in
no.
consideration.
Okay. Oh, well, when we look at his best seasons, Jimmy Graham was there. When we look at Matthew Stafford, he had
Not in
one reliable
2009.
receiver.
Not in
No,
2009. He had Jeremy Shockey, but Jeremy Shockey did not have a great season that year.
no. Jeremy Shockey had a good season that year.
In
2009,
2009, no, not until the postseason.
well, when it mattered most, he had it. When it mattered most, he had it. When you look at the Detroit Lions offensive line, never over Matthew Stafford's career as a Detroit line did he have over a top 15 offensive line. Number one, you look at his receiver core, he had Calvin Johnson, he had Calvin Johnson less than half his
And
career
yet
there,
his pressure
and
to
he was
sack
still
ratio was high all the time.
but
Every
yeah,
single year,
because his offensive line's horrible.
his pressure to sack ratio, right? So you're talking about someone
Yeah,
who is getting pressured all the time and is not
yes.
able to escape from the territory. And
Really?
then
Are we
on
going
top
to
of
put that
it, you're
argument?
talking about,
Drew Brees is slower than Matthew Stafford. You know what? I know what. Everybody knows it. And
yes,
we're going to put that argument. He couldn't.
but that's
Drew
my
Brees.
argument.
Okay. Hold on. Mr. Stats aficionado. Let's pull up something now. You know how many head coaches Drew Brees had over his entire career? Two.
Two.
You know how many head coaches Matthew Stafford had in his entire time at Detroit? Five.
Yeah.
Five. You know how many reliable offensive coordinators he had? Zero. And the one time he had a good offensive coordinator, he wasn't even there for 2 years max. 2 years max. We say he had Calvin Johnson. He had all of this. He had that. Calvin Johnson, let's remember
He didn't
this.
just
The
have
reason
Calvin
why he
Johnson.
retired
He
so.
had Golden Tate, who also was a 1,000-yard receiver in
Oh, are we going to
2014.
really put that
And
up? Are we going to really
still,
put that up?
that year, he had what was it, a 44.7 QBR. All right. This
Oh,
was a
is it?
man
Is
whose
it? So how many times did Golden
sack
Tate have a
percentage was
1,000 yard season?
6.96 when he had the best O line of his career. All right. And he
Really? And
always
oh wait, oh,
consistently
pause, pause, pause,
had
pause, pause,
less
pause, pause, pause,
than 30 touchdowns in a
pause,
season.
pause.
How does that
Oh,
warrant a player
okay.
who's
Are
worth
we
being
gonna
a
use that?
first
I
ballot
see.
Hall of Famer?
I see. I see. So this is what we're gonna do. First of all, you asked me is he a Hall of Famer? I didn't hear he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I agree with you.
I'll get
He's
to
not a
that. I'll
first
get to
ballot
the
Hall of
Hall
Famer.
of Fame too. I'll get
He's
to
a
the Hall
Hall
of
of
Fame.
Famer
I
without
just
a
want to
doubt.
start with that. I want to start
Okay,
off with that.
first no, but here's my point. First of all, it's not even right in any sense to compare Drew Brees, who's I think second most in passing yards all
Yeah,
time, second most in total passing touchdowns over his entire career, has
sure.
one of the highest QBRs of all time.
100%.
But he had one head coach, an offensive genius for most of his career. We're looking at what Sean Payton is doing with Bo Nix right now, similar to what he did with Drew Brees. We talk about all this holy Drew Brees. What was he with the Chargers? He was an average quarterback with the Chargers. Imagine he was stuck with the Chargers with Marty Schottenheimer. Suppose Marty Schottenheimer left and he was still at the Chargers.
Sure.
Will we be saying the same thing about Drew Brees? I don't think
Well, let
so.
me ask you
I don't
this.
think so.
Let's talk about the
Actually, no.
quarterback who
Let me
ended up
finish. Let me
being in
finish.
the
Let me
Chargers
finish.
for a sec.
Let me
Philip
finish. Let me
Rivers.
finish. Let me finish.
Sure.
Imagine Matthew Stafford had Sean McVay over his entire career. Would we be saying the same thing? Would we be saying the same thing? He
Yes,
comes in his
I
first,
would agree. I would say
really,
so. Yes.
really, comes in his first year. He throws 41 touchdowns and wins them a Super Bowl in his first year under Sean McVay.
Sure.
First year, by the way.
Let me,
First year.
well, yeah. Well, in the case of
Yeah.
Matthew Stafford, that was one of his best years. I'll give him that.
Don't give me
But that's the
that, dude.
thing. The
Come
problem
on.
with Matthew Stafford is that he's extremely, extremely inconsistent. 2021,
No.
he did have a very good year. But let's look at the year before.
This is not
He
a
had
Caleb Williams
26
situation.
touchdowns
See, you're making this a Caleb Williams situation as though no, you know what? The pressure rate is really high. Why? Because he's not able to move
because
out.
that
His
was the
pressure just
case
like
with Matthew Stafford.
no,
Matthew
it was
Stafford
not.
ended up being a better version of what Caleb Williams has been with the Bears for a
No,
long portion of his career. Where yes,
you're
he
forgetting
did have a
something. In
bad
2000,
surrounding around him, but he wasn't one of these top quarterbacks. He wasn't Ben Roethlisberger. He wasn't Aaron Rodgers.
oh
I
no,
can name on my hands quarterbacks
Mhm.
that were better than him during that time, consistently.
Matthew
Peyton
Stafford
Manning,
was a
Tom
top
Brady,
five
Drew
quarterback.
Brees, Ben Roethlisberger, Aaron Rodgers, Philip Rivers, Matt Ryan. For the
No,
first 5 years of
no,
his career, Joe Flacco. All right.
no.
That's eight quarterbacks I've already mentioned that I could just think off
Here's
top of
no,
my
no,
head.
no, 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 no,
Andrew
no.
Luck.
Hey, let's pause on it. Here's the difference. Look at their coaching staff. Look at the organization. Look at the players that they have around them. Quality players that
Oh,
were
oh, oh,
able
oh.
to.
Andrew
Yeah,
Luck. Andrew Luck,
yeah,
the guy who had
yeah.
one of the worst
Put it up.
offensive lines to the point where his
Mm,
spleen was
mm,
bleeding on a
mm.
daily basis in
Is
2015.
that the argument
The
we're going to use?
man
Reggie
whose
Wayne,
coach,
Bruce Arians, a reliable defense. Is that the
Bruce
argument we're going
Arians,
to
he only
use?
had his first year. Then he had a
Doesn't
terrible
no no
offensive
no no
coordinator for
no
the next few years.
no. But we're talking about Andrew Luck, and when he appeared on the scene, that was when he had Bruce Arians.
For
That's
one
when he had
year.
Bruce Arians. That's when
One
he had
year
Reggie
career,
Wayne.
though,
That's
doesn't
when
make
he
a Hall
had.
of Fame career. And Andrew
Are you
Luck
kidding me?
would have
He makes
probably
the
been a
AFC
Hall of Famer had he
Championship with a reliable
finished his
offensive
career.
line. He makes the AFC Championship with a reliable offensive line against the New England Patriots in 2014. You don't
Who?
give me
The
that
Colt?
argument
No,
now.
no, 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 no,
Yeah,
no.
yeah,
I'm sorry,
yeah,
what?
yes. He had a
No, hold on.
reliable offensive line in 2014.
Andrew Luck
I would
got
say at least.
sacked 30 times in 2014.
For Matthew Stafford, that's a regular. Understand that for Matthew Stafford, that's a regular.
Matthew Stafford got sacked 29 times in 2012 when they went 4 and 12. In
Oh my. Yeah.
2013, got
Mm.
sacked 23 times when they went
Okay.
7 and 9. In
Okay.
2011, the year where
Uh,
he actually had his best year, all right? He
sure.
got sacked
Sure.
more times. He got sacked more
Uh,
times in 2017 when the team was better. And they actually
name
had a
one
better
pro
O-line, just
name
talent-wise too.
one Pro Bowler from the Detroit Lions offensive line that was there at the same time as Matthew Stafford. Give
Taylor
me
Decker,
one Pro
TJ
Bowl.
Lang, Ricky Wagner, Graham Glasgow,
Glasgow is now.
Frank Ragnow, Laken Tomlinson, Riley
Was he?
Reed,
Hold up.
Larry
Frank
Warford,
Ragnow was
who,
wait
by the
wait wait.
way, Larry Warford ended up playing for the Saints, ended up playing better with the Saints.
Because they have a better. The Detroit Lions as an organization is a faulty, was at least a faulty organization that had nothing. Nothing. You had five different head coaches. No, no, no. Yash, I want to finish this. You had
Sure.
five different head coaches. My mom's yelling at me for shouting. You had five different head coaches. You had no organizational stability at all. You lose Calvin Johnson just as you make your way into your career. You don't have a head coach. You don't have an offensive coordinator that's reliable. You don't have a system that fits you. You have an offensive line that's constantly giving up pressure. We talked
Sure.
the pressure to sack ratio. Matthew Stafford isn't a running quarterback. Tom Brady is not a running quarterback, yet we hail him. His pressure to sack ratio, if you put him in the Detroit Lions team, would have been much worse than Matthew Stafford. So don't give me that
So then let me
hodgepodgeism
ask
now.
you this.
Okay?
Would you
Yeah.
put Matthew Stafford in the Hall, or sorry, would you put Matt Ryan in the Hall of Fame? Would you put Philip Rivers in the Hall of Fame? Not first ballot, just
Mm.
Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Philip Rivers, what's it called? Matt
All
Ryan,
right.
Ben
Yeah.
Roethlisberger.
Yeah.
Philip Rivers actually has similar arguments being with the Chargers, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you put those three? Would you put Joe Flacco
Yeah.
just for
Yeah.
those 5 years? That was this continuous
No.
career.
No.
Andrew
I'm
Luck.
putting Joe Flacco. I'm putting Andrew Luck now. Okay. Joe Flacco, Matt Ryan, Philip Rivers are all in the Hall of Fame. First ballot, no, but they're all in the Hall of Fame. They're all in the Hall of Fame. They're all in the Hall of Fame.
So let me ask you this: would you
Philip
put
Rivers,
Matthew Stafford as a first ballot Hall of Fame?
no, I'll give you that. Okay, I'll give you that. He's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, but 100% Hall of Famer, yes, 100% Hall of Famer. Okay,
So
see, this is my problem with this. How are we going to compare Drew Brees and Matthew Stafford? That's not even fair.
well, I compare him from the sense of the defense itself, right? You want to make an argument
Yeah.
between the defensive itself, right? What the
Mm,
difference to me between a first ballot Hall of Famer, a Hall of Famer, and a non-Hall of Famer is a player
mm,
should not have that type of percentage where you're only one of your seven opportunities to win the game. When you have the last possession, you
mm.
should not screw the pooch 6 times of seven.
Oh, so
Whereas
I see.
Drew
Mr.
Brees,
Quarterback Defender is now saying that you have seven plays. You have one of the worst offensive lines in the league regularly. You don't have a reliable receiving core to you at all. You
because
have a head coach
Matthew
that's going to
Stafford
just
did have
call
a
plays anytime he wants.
he did have a reliable offensive line. People
No, he
just seem
didn't.
to
No,
forget
no,
that.
no, he didn't. No, he didn't. You can't give me 29 sacks, 23 sacks, and then 30 something sacks
Well, Andrew
in the
Luck had
best
30
season of his
sacks
career.
perennially in his career.
You know who Andrew Luck had most of his time as an offense coordinator? You want to know who that is?
Yeah,
Who?
it was not Bruce. I'll tell you. Give me 1 sec.
It
I'm
wasn't
trying
Bruce
to remember.
Arians. I'll give you the answer. Nick Sirianni. You
Nope.
know who he is right now? Yeah, he is.
It was
Nick
Pep
Sirianni was
Hamilton.
no. Nick Sirianni was there as an offense
Nick
coordinator.
Sirianni was not the offense. He was the quarterbacks coach, I think, for a couple of
No,
seasons.
he was the
But
offensive coordinator. He was the
no,
offensive
that was
coordinator
in
for them.
only in the last year, I think. Yeah, it was only in 2018.
Sure,
Yeah.
but he got hired in
The
2020.
first 4 or 5 years, his coach was Pep Hamilton. They fired
Okay,
Pep Hamilton in 2015. They
right.
hired Rob Chudzinski. He didn't really play in 2016 or
Mm,
2017 that much,
mm-hmm,
but for a majority of Andrew Luck's first 4 seasons, it was Pep
mm.
Hamilton, who
Okay,
was uh
yeah. So we're gonna put so. So what you're saying is if I took Andrew Luck and I put him in Matthew Stafford's situation, he would have been a better quarterback than he was at Indianapolis. Is that what you're
yes,
saying?
I would
That's a
certainly say so.
ridiculous statement. That's a ridiculous statement. You know, no one has a deep throw like Matthew Stafford.
I
Aaron
agree.
Rodgers is the closest
But I
to it.
also think that Matthew Stafford's deep ball is not nearly as efficient as, say, Matt Ryan.
Right, right, right. So if we're going to use that argument, right? Now, maybe give an offensive line like the Atlanta had with the Lions, maybe then we talk about efficiency. See, this is the
Sure.
problem that I have with this. We keep talking about this pressure to sack ratio and all these. I'm going to be a Charles Barkley here. Absolutely useless, dumb statistics to justify a quarterback being decently respectful, right? Look at the situation that he has, and then talk all the crap that you want about stats. Stats, look, I was much more reliant or not as forceful on this before, but I'll say it now. Stats has a big part, right? I hate it, but it has a big part about sports. there is a lot of things from a stat standpoint that is extremely important. The type of plays that you call,
Mhm.
everything, stats is important, but it always gets oversized compared to the big picture. Surprisingly enough, stats becomes the big picture when it should never be, and it can never be. It will never be. Stats is not the answer behind every single solution. Every single solution in its basis is based on the big picture. That's a situation. That's the people that you have around you. That's the organization in itself. From the Detroit Lions standpoint, it's a shame that Matthew Stafford didn't have the likes of Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson,
Um,
etc. It's a real shame because that city of Detroit, if it had anything to carry or pat itself on the back, it was that Matthew Stafford and Calvin Johnson were the sole hearts of that Lions team. That's the only thing that they had. And I can guarantee you this: bring in Matt Ryan, Andrew Luck, Philip Rivers, and put them in that same situation as a cursed team, just like the Boston Red Sox before the 2004, I want to say. Every single thing. The curse on that Lions team, and he had to come in and all of a sudden be savior, and no one believed in him because everybody thought the Lions were just not going to be anything. Matthew Stafford was a sole heart of that Lions team. Now, I want to preface this. He is not a first ballot Hall of Famer, nor does he deserve to be. Okay? That's why I feel like comparing him with Drew Brees is,
right,
like, what the hell are we talking about?
right.
But is he a Hall of Famer? Undoubtedly so. Undoubtedly so. And if now the question is, are we not going to put in the same argument for Eli Manning? Completely different thing, though.
Yeah, completely different.
Completely different thing, right? Completely different thing. Because Eli Manning had a much more talented squad compared to the Lions throughout his career. Throughout his career. Now, the other argument I would say is this: if you had Calvin Johnson's for 3, 4 more seasons, we might be talking about Matthew Stafford being a
I
first ballot
actually
Hall of
agree
Fame.
with you on
That's the
that. And
truth. That's the truth. Okay.
yes,
Now, you never had a more reliable receiver or a decent receiver than Calvin Johnson.
right,
You had Calvin Johnson, and then who? Who's the question that you
right.
always about the Detroit
Well,
Lions?
you
Okay,
had Golden Tate for a few years. You had a few other players.
for a few
You,
years, and he was
yes,
meaningless.
yeah,
Okay, he had 1,000 yard season that was decent, and then
right,
after that fell off. Okay,
right.
but my argument in this case is this: Matthew Stafford did what most players could have not done with the situation that he was in. Year after year after year, he took thump after thump. We talk about, oh, Drew Brees had broken ribs and this and that. Compare the number of sacks that Drew Brees had over the same number of years as with the Saints, as Matthew Stafford had with the Lions. It won't be close. I don't have that math with me, but I can almost guarantee that. Okay, it's not at all a fair argument to compare both of them. But really throwing statistics out of the way. In the big picture, this man's a Hall of Famer without a doubt. First ballot, no.
I'll
That's where
say
I'll leave
this
it.
from a Hall of Fame standpoint, we're just looking from a Hall of Fame standpoint. I still don't think that he's a Hall of Famer. I think if you give him a couple years, if you give him a couple years, because for me, the whole thing has been, yeah, the Rams are a completely different situation than the Lions, right? You got a much better offense play call. Give it a couple of years. If we have this conversation maybe in 2026, I want to see what Matthew Stafford's numbers look like at that point. Under that standpoint, I can very
Mm-hmm.
well understand an argument of saying he's a Hall of Famer. Certainly, however, I will not put him in a first ballot Hall of Fame category
No,
anytime soon.
no, you can't. You can't. You can't. That's true. Now, what if he wins two more Super Bowls? It's unlikely,
Then
but what if
it's
he
then
wins
he's
two
a
more
first
Super
ballot
Bowls?
Hall of Fame, especially if he wins one Super Bowl.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing with these Hall of Famers. It's going to be fun to see what
What they
happens.
do. Yeah.
Absolutely. But that's where we're going to end it off today. It's been a great episode. It's been a fun episode, a
Yeah.
very heated episode too. Hopefully, this gets us more clips like the old Skip Bayless, Stephen A. Smith shows used to back in the day. But
Who's Skip Bayless?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, he's just yeah. You're right. I forgot. He's just some figure of my imagination.
Oh yeah. Okay. Now I know. Now I know.
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah,
fanatic Dallas Cowboys fan who doesn't know what to do with his life and trying to look like he's actually built when he's not built at all. Yeah, that guy. Yeah. Yeah, I remember him.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know what he looks like? You know, you take a hot dog and then you like completely flatten it out. with the hot dog inside of it and the mayonnaise and the ketchup. Like he's just got everything all over himself.
Nah, no,
He's
no.
not
Skip
looking good.
Bayless looks like the wrapper you put around the hot dog.
He looks like a wannabe Eminem. There we go. Yeah, there we go. And
That's a
this is
good
from
one.
coming from a guy who has absolutely zero rap knowledge. Like if you ask me rappers, this is all I'm gonna say. Eminem.
Eminem
Uh,
and
hold up, hold
Eminem.
up, hold up. Eminem. Uh, Lil Uzi. Drake.
No, man.
Drake. No, Drake's a rapper.
No, I know he
Um,
is. He is.
Lil Lil something. Uh, there's a bunch of Lils, bro, in this rapper world. I don't know
Absolutely.
what's up with the Lils. Wait, well, Hawaiian boys,
Oh, Island
something.
Boys.
Island boys. There we go.
That is
There we
one
go.
of the,
Um, Snoop Doggy Dogg. Got that. Thank God. I would have got killed for that one. Um, Tupac. Uh,
the
let's
OG.
see. This is really embarrassing, by the way, not knowing 10 rappers at the top of the head. Who's that one really fat guy? I mean, huge guy.
Biggie.
Nah.
Big Pun.
Um, no. Like he's huge. I mean, he's offensive line. Like
90s, right?
Rick Ross. There we
Oh,
go.
right.
Rick Ross, and then wait, who's that guy? Eminem's like Jay Z.
Jay-Z is one,
Is
but he's
he?
not. I think you're thinking 50 Cent, though.
50 Cent. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. One more. I gotta get 10 in. Ooh, there's one more guy. Oh, he was with Travis Hunter. Um, he talks like he was drunk. What's his name? Like, uh, I was about to say he has tattoos over his face, but that's kind of a given for a rapper. Oh man, I know his name. He's kind of short, locks. Uh, okay, I guess I stop at 9. I
Yeah.
give up. Yeah, that's my rap knowledge, guys. It's
I was
not.
gonna ask, you didn't know Dr. Dre, the guy who hosted the 2022 Super Bowl that had Matthew Stafford, the guy who was next to Snoop Dogg, the Super Bowl that actually started our interest in talking to each other about football?
Huh?
Ah, whatever.
What? Wait,
Well,
Doctor Who?
more on that
Dre?
in Dr. Dre.
Wait. Dr. Dre. He was with Snoop on
Yeah,
Jimmy Fallon.
absolutely. Where's
Wait,
my
isn't
headphone?
he? No, but is he not a producer?
He's a producer, but he's also a rapper. He's what he
He's a
was on
rapper.
NWA.
Okay, that doesn't help me. But so he is a rapper,
Yeah,
but he's a producer.
yeah.
Okay, okay. I mean, so he's the one who did it with Kanye. I didn't even mention
No, no, with
Kanye.
Snoop, with Snoop.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Oh, but then wait, who was the guy who introduced Kanye first?
with Jay-Z. That was Jay-Z.
Jay Z. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Right.
and
Well, to end off the episode, top 10 rappers of all time. No.
more on
No,
the
scratch
next
that. Scratch that.
episode about Akilesh's rap knowledge. We will
Yeah,
educate him about that
exactly.
in the Instagram section of my new channel, which I am trying to promote.
And first of all, look, with my little rap knowledge, I know Eminem disses anybody he doesn't like. I'm just gonna say, sir, I mentioned your name first. I'm just gonna say I mentioned your name first, so please do not diss me out and go after my entire family history. But please,
More
I
on
mean,
that,
yeah, more
but
on the next episode.
yeah,
No,
more
no,
on that
I'm
on
just
the
gonna say
next
like
episode.
I heard one thing, and I don't like to listen to rap because they go on cuss words like it's pasta with tomatoes. Like they just go on rattling off, but he can get after some guys. I mean, like really, like I was like, wowza! Like if he found out about me and I did something wrong to Eminem, good God, I don't. I think I would wear a like face mask, like trying to look like the it. You know what I mean? Like something different, just so that I don't get caught. Like Eminem, sir,
I gotta get you into some Nas and Kendrick Lamar then, as far as diss tracks go, man.
Eminem, you're number one. If you're listening to this, Eminem, you're number one. I don't care. You're number one.
Hey, but this has been a fun episode today.
Yes.
A lot more coming in the next few weeks as far as content goes. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Peace.